What's up everybody, Coach Mills here coming at you with a brand new Valorant video.
And today we're going to be breaking down the agent pick rates in Radiant so that we know exactly what is the strongest characters right now for the ranked meta, and that you will know what characters you should be playing, what characters you should be avoiding, and some interesting statistics about each and every one. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for the in-depth advanced guides over every single agent we're going to talk about in this video, plus a lot more. If you want to climb the ranked ladder with these, do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, right off the bat, we got to talk about something that most people are already going to know, but at the top of the ranked pick rates in Radiant are going to be the three most impactful duelists that you can play for solo impact in Jett, Reyna, and Raze at respectively a 23.4% pick rate, a 22.1% pick rate, and a 14.8% pick rate. Now, when you look at the entire sheet, I want you to notice something that is really important. First off, you gotta look at their average combat score, which is astronomically higher than the average, with the only one even coming close is specifically Phoenix with a 230 average combat score, but he's quite a bit down the list as far as play rate. Now, that being said, these three also have a very high first blood percentage, in Jett having a 20.1%, Raze having a 16.6%, and Raze having a 15.6%. So these are characters that are getting first bloods a lot, having high average combat scores in their games, which means they're just gonna have more than average high impact, which is why a lot of Radiant players flock to these characters. And pretty much across every single rank, an iteration of these three are always pretty close to the top. Now, that being said, we talked about high average combat score and high first blood, so why is Phoenix so far down the list if he checks both of those boxes? Well, I want you to really take note of the win percentage. When Jett, Reyna, and Raze don't have the highest win percentage, but they do have close to 50%, Phoenix has actually quite a bit less. And we have to ask ourselves, okay, why is that happening? Why does this happen when people are playing Phoenix as opposed to Jett, Reyna, and Raze? In my personal opinion, the big reason and the big thing that can separate Phoenix from the other three characters is Phoenix has no mobility, unlike Jett, Reyna, and Raze, who all have a form of mobility to get out of danger, and that supports a more all-in carry play style. And as such, Phoenix does have only a 1.03 KD, which is slightly less than Raze, but quite a bit less than Jett at 1.09 and Reyna at 1.11, Reyna having the highest KD in the game. Now, does that mean Phoenix is a bad character for you to play in your ranked games? No, absolutely not. If you're consistently having a high average combat score, high solo impact, Phoenix is perfectly fine. But when you're talking about the Radiant rank, when people are trying to abuse some of the most powerful abilities for solo impact, Jett, Reyna, and Raze are the best in the dueler category, so those are going to be the top of the meta. But let's move on to some other interesting statistics that I wanted to talk about, specifically the win percentage for certain characters. And let's talk about the characters that have a actual positive win rate. So we have Sage, we have Cypher, we have Yoru, Skye, and Viper. Now, something that you need to note though is look on the right side, those are the overall matches played. And the problem is, because there's not a large enough sample size for some of the lower tier characters, we cannot assume that these stats are gonna be that accurate. I mean, Viper only has 40 games to her name compared to Jett that has 1,602 on this data sheet. So that's really important for you to understand. Just because she has a pretty decent win rate doesn't mean that it would continue for a large amount of games. But that being said, we look all the way up at Sage, and Sage does have a lot of matches and a higher than average win rate. And we have to ask ourselves, okay, why is Sage not only the fourth most picked, but someone that actually has an above average win rate, when a lot of people used to think that Sage was absolutely trash and she really didn't get that many changes to make her all of a sudden good? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. First off, Sage is incredibly good on Icebox, which is a map that people are starting to figure out, and Sage allowing her to gum up defensively on specifically the A side, or do things like slow off rafters so enemies can't easily swing and challenge you when you're getting that spike down. Plus, the intricacy of her walls is very powerful on Icebox, and there's a lot of crazy walls that you could put up. You can wall off tube, you can do some aggressive based walls. Sage has a lot of options on that map, and in general, players are playing Sage more and more. Now, moving down the list, as the 5th most picked agent in the entire game right now, we have Silva, who interestingly enough has the smallest amount of first bloods in the game, but he still has a pretty high win rate and pick rate. And the reason is he's just an enabler, right? We've talked about this in Silva guides. Silva is incredibly good at enabling Jett, Reyna, and Raze to do their job better, and that is predominantly why he's one of the most powerful characters in the game. Especially when we talk about some of those bigger changes to some of the other information gatherers, specifically Cypher and Killjoy, where Killjoy, if she's too far away, her stuff doesn't work, and if Cypher dies, his traps get disabled. Silva's a character that is amazing for retakes, he's amazing for aggressive-based engages, and because his information gather ability, the recon arrow is on a cooldown, you can use it once to bait an engage, bait out a whole bunch of cooldowns, and then eventually you rotate off, you get it again, and you do a fast execution, which is definitely really good for Silva. Now I want to talk about something really interesting about these pick rates, because initially we talked about how Brimstone was very powerful with these really long-lasting smokes, but Omen was way more flexible, and a lot of pros came out and said Omen is just the better character, period. Brimstone is good, he's okay, but he's not as good as Omen, and yeah, that might be true for pro play, but it doesn't look like the same thing is happening for ranked play, because Brimstone is seeing a little bit more pick rate than Omen, at least in Radiant. Now, what makes the most sense to me in this regard is when you talk about the ranked environment where almost every single team is going to have a Jett and a Reyna, and I know that this has been happening in your games as well. A lot of times, teams will have maybe 3 or 4 duelists and then 1 controller, no Sentinels. But Brimstone, unlike Omen, provides a type of stalling capability that is similar to something that you would see on a Sentinel. For instance, being able to use your Molly to prevent a rush is something that if you don't have a Cypher, you're just gonna fall victim to again and again. And in that regard, in the ranked environment, making sure that you have a counter to these just crazy aggressive rushes is really important, and being able to kind of overlap a little bit with the controller and the Sentinel role by playing Brimstone is something that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, that being said, one of the big things that you need to understand about the Brimstone versus Omen dichotomy is that some maps Brimstone is going to be a little bit better, and some maps Omen is going to be better. Now, according to the statistics here for Radiant games, Icebox and Haven specifically favor Brimstone, while some of the other maps actually slightly favor Omen, and it's going to be also based on how you play these maps, of course. But the thing that is definitely more important is looking at your own team composition, and that will help you better decide if you need some more stopping defensive power of Brimstone with longer smokes, or if you would rather have some sort of aggressive engage in Omen. If you have a Sentinel, some sort of staller, then maybe you can have a little bit more leeway. You don't need that Molly, and you can opt for a more aggressive kit in that Paranoia rather than that Molly. So that's just something to keep in mind in general if you know how to play both characters and you're deciding which controller to pick. Now, we definitely got to talk about the Sentinels that are seeing play. Both Killjoy and Cypher see a decent amount of play, with Killjoy edging out the matchup. And the thing about Killjoy is not only is she incredibly powerful for retake strategies using her ultimate, but her abilities can be absolutely oppressive on that pistol round, and you'll see lots of players in ranked in particular trying to either one, avoid Killjoy altogether in pistols, and if they fail to do so, they're giving up these rounds for essentially free. Now, that being said, however, the decision between Killjoy and Cypher is going to come up to your personal preference more than anything, because I said these characters are very close in pick rate and win rate, so it's really up to your personal opinion as to which one to play if you're specifically a Sentinel main. Now, let's talk about some characters that are rather disappointing, that are down the list, don't have that many matches to show for because they're just not played all that much at the highest ranks of play. Now, the 4 characters I wanted to talk about is Yoru, Breach, Viper, and Skye. And Yoru was a character that even us here have overblown. Everyone was really overblowing how powerful this character was when he first came out, but it became pretty obvious that a lot of his abilities were just way too loud, too easy to play around, too predictable, and Yoru has very weak flashes, very weak overall kit, and his ultimate doesn't get that much consistent value. Now, of course, you can play Yoru to a certain level if you're really great at Yoru, but he's really not going to be a very consistent character at taking site control, which is one of the primary jobs of a lot of the duelists in the game, and I do think that you're going to get a lot easier value value on many of the other duelists, so really this character might be one of the weaker characters in the game right now, and unless you really like the character for whatever reason, he's probably someone that is not worth the time to learn how to master. You're gonna have a lot easier time climbing with some of the other agents in the game. Now, Breach is an interesting one all the way down here. Not only does he have an abysmal win rate, which we can't really take at face value, not that many matches have been played, but he doesn't have a very high pick rate at all, which is really weird because in pro play, he sees a lot of pick rate, and it's really obvious why there's a big disparity here. It just comes down to the fact that Breach needs coordination. Breach needs your team to use his abilities in coordinated assaults together, and that's very, very hard to coordinate in ranked play, especially when you're talking all the way up at Radiant, when you can't do anything more than 2-stack. It's going to be basically impossible. Now, Breach is probably still going to see a decent amount of play for, you know, scrims and, of course, the pro meta, but in ranked play, he's going to be a character that is very difficult to reach his impact ceiling, so that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe you would rather play something like Silva that can easily set up teammates for aggressive-based plays, but at the same time, isn't absolutely useless if he can't pull those things off. That's what I would highly suggest as far as Initiator is concerned. But as usual, it's up to your personal preference as which to pick here, but it is a pretty large disparity if I'm being honest. Now, let's talk about Viper and Skye, two characters that are very low in pick rate. Let's talk about why and some things that can happen to these characters to make them a lot better. First off, Viper, we've talked many times about how underpowered Viper is, but that being said, she's still decent if you play her with another controller and you use her abilities specifically for retake. She's incredibly powerful and probably one of the best characters for actually splitting up a site and playing for retake, but that is going to pair really well if you already have a controller because she's never going to take that spot. But then you have to start asking yourself, okay, if I'm playing her in the spot of an initiator or a duelist, what am I trading her out for? And if you have to cut away really powerful characters that get automatic intrinsic value like Killjoy or like Sage, then you really have to start questioning if it's actually worth it, and that's going to be up to you. But that being said, maybe putting some time and effort into practicing this character because there is a high likelihood that she's going to get some buffs in the near future. So at the very least, you could look forward to that for all you Viper mains. Now, the last and the least picked character is Skye, which personally I think she suffers from two big problems. First is the Breach problem, where she really wants coordination to be good. She saw quite a bit of play in pro meta, a lot more than this abysmal pick rate. But that being said, she still needs setup with her team for her to get value, and she's just not going to get that in rank, so that's why she's such a low pick rate. And honestly, she's underpowered. Her flashes are really easy to destroy. Maybe a buff to her flashes, the flash health, might really help her bump up her pick rate here, or some other small change to her kit to make her a little bit better at being efficient herself, maybe using her own flashes to make plays. But one tip I could give you for all you Skye players is actually throwing out your flash, not with the intent to flash it off. Throw it out, cancel it where you're not detonating it, but you're letting it just keep riding along the wall, and then you just swing the enemy. A lot of times enemies will track it through the air, and you're just using it as a bait to swing on them, mess up their crosshair placement. That's one of the best ways that I could suggest you use the flash. But honestly, Skye is probably just a character that you really don't want to main right now. Silva's going to be a lot more guaranteed value, a lot easier value, and you're just going to have a better time on him unless you're trying to grind Skye to be unique, different, or you're just waiting for those buffs to come down the pipeline. Now, that being said, master of any of these characters is a click away. On the GameLeap website, we have in-depth advanced guides, VOD reviews, tips and tricks over every single agent, plus weapon guides, map guides, everything you could possibly need. So do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time,